Welcome back to this special Independence Day edition of Sunrise Daily, coming to you live from our Abuja studio. Standing by with me is the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed. Honorable Minister, you are concluding your thoughts on why it is that more money is budgeted than ultimately released in programs like the SIP.
Well, I was explaining that the provision that is made in the budget is not meant to be funds you just release. First of all, you have to release it to a structure that is defined, and you have to release it to beneficiaries that are identified, registered, and also that it is to the 4 cluster programs that have been designed. So we have now on this scheme 500,000 youths that have been employed, and they're getting 30,000 monthly stipends. We have almost 9 million school children that are being fed in schools across 26 states of the Federation. These things take a lot of time to plan to make sure that you get it right. The school feeding program is employing about 99,000 cooks right now. These cooks buy foods from the markets daily to be able to cook. The farmers that are within those communities are producing food to feed the feed the homegrown school feeding program, because we have insisted that the food that the children must eat must be locally produced within their immediate environment. So it has a lot of multiplier effects, but it also takes a lot of planning between the federal government and the states, because these activities are all taking place in the state. The conditional cash transfer, that is the 5,000 naira stipend that is given to the most vulnerable in society, takes a lot of time to identify really the poor and the vulnerable, because we didn't want people to just say it's just this person or that person. It was a very extensive process that involved the communities sitting down themselves to say these are the families that you should help, and then going to those families, visiting their homes, seeing what is there, registering them, making sure that they are fully identified, and identifying who is the caregiver in the family that will be getting this stipend. But they also had conditions that they must make sure that their children go to school, that if there's a pregnant woman, she must obtain antenatal. So there's a lot of monitoring work, because we wanted to make sure that when you give them this 5,000, it helps to improve their life, not just for them to collect money. And we've seen already the results that the outcomes of school of their children has improved, their health outcomes have improved. We've even seen some mothers beginning to save and start small trades.
Let's take a look quickly at the issue of debt restructuring. We know in 2015, approximately 84% of the nation's debt was in domestic debt stock at an interest rate of approximately 16 to 18%. External debts interest rate approximately, external debts interest rate approximately, I think, 6 to 7%. Now, that's only 16% though of the total debt. If it has gone from 84 to 16 as a ratio to now about, I think, 73 to 27, how optimistic are you that over the next few years you can get it to 60-40? Because right now, domestic debt stock, the huge interest rate attached to it, is still draining coffers around the country.
Well, so the latest figures we have is now 70-30. So we're making progress. And what we're doing is we're restructuring the debt, refinancing local debts that mature with longer-term, cheaper foreign debt. And the balance is shifting. Our target is to move to 60-40, 60 domestic, 40
external.
40 external. And we also, in the external borrowing, we're taking a mix of concessionary loans, which are loans at very low interest rates, 3%, and with tenors of 25%, some even 25 years, some even longer. So the mix we have right now is about 51% of the foreign debts, 51% concessionary loans, and then the 49% commercial loans, which are the 6 to 7% that you said. So we're rebalancing the mix to reduce the burden of debt service and moving away from local borrowing and refinancing with long-term borrowing. What we're doing also is, as we're reducing the borrowing in the local market, we're also giving room to the private sector to be able to borrow locally, because in what has happened in the past is government borrowing has crowded out the private sector from being able to access financing from our banks.
How sufficient do you think the move to allow the Central Bank of Nigeria to offer single interest rate loans to manufacturers and farmers, for example, how effective do you think that ultimately will be? Is it enough in terms of boosting the economy across those sectors?
Well, it is helping to provide more finance at a lower cost to critical sectors like agriculture and manufacturing. Is it enough? No, not yet. We hope that as we go within our reforms and interest rates come down, that even commercial banks themselves will be able to offer funds at lower cost so that more businesses can borrow. But the CBN interventions are supposed to catalyze that happening. And already there's already an increased uptake in financing of the private sector.
We know that one of the major kind of cogs in the strategy of former Finance Minister Kemi Adeosun was the issue of how the federal government can more effectively kind of regulate, in a way, the finances of the states. What do you say about the 600 billion naira that was set aside as a budget support facility for states who meet certain indices in terms of IGR development, in terms of transparency in their budgeting processes, etc.? How many of the states have keyed into that, and how effective do you think that program ultimately has been in kind of sanitizing state finances?
So let me step back a bit. By 2015, there were 25 states that could not pay salaries. And we also saw an economy that was going to go into recession. So it was not enough for federal government alone to design measures to spend in the economy without taking the states along. And that's the reason why the interventions had to be provided. Like you said, 606 billion have been provided to bail out these 25 states. Sorry, all of the states except one, except Lagos, now have taken that. But not only was the funds provided, it was provided with conditions. The conditions you have enumerated to ensure better transparency in their public financial management. We've seen this particular intervention improving the financial management in the states. IGRs are going up, payrolls have come down, not because they sacked staff, but because they attain better efficiency by enrolling staff on things like the IPPIS, by cleaning up the payroll and getting rid of ghost workers. We have seen states produce their financial accounts somewhere in over 5 years lag. Now a lot of them are up to date. So these are good things. They are so positive that the World Bank, seeing what the federal government has done, has now provided $750 million that states can access, and the condition still being tied to the performance of the fiscal support plan that was enumerated by the federal government. So any state that is on track in that has the opportunity to obtain very low-cost funds from the World Bank for their state economic developments.
What do you say to, kind of the reality that has played out where states would, for example, go to deposit money banks, collect loans, and before now you would have essentially the Debt Management DMO Act thrown out of the window in terms of them getting these loans from deposit money banks without the approval of the Federal Ministry of Finance. In that regard, what is happening in terms of the level of insight that the Federal Ministry of Finance has into the accumulation of debts by states as of now?
Well, right now, what we've been able to attain is that borrowing made by states is channeled through the federal government. So there's no state that can borrow externally without approval, in fact, without the approval of the parliament through the federal government. So that way we're able to see what they're borrowing externally. But also the local borrowing, we're able to see through the financial reports that they are now producing. We're able to see how much each state has. In fact, the Bureau of the National Bureau of Statistics produces annual reports on the borrowings by state. So we're able to see what they have borrowed. For any borrowing that they're going to do externally, we have to review the local obligations that they have. We have to review their ability to service the debt before we now recommend it to the Parliament for approval.
Honourable Minister, so many more issues, so many more questions. Unfortunately, we have run out of time.
Oh dear.
So quickly, I know. I just want to thank you so much for coming on the program and sharing your insights on Independence Day with us.
Thank you very much for having me, and happy independence, every Nigerian.
I have been speaking with the Honourable Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed. At this juncture, we will close this segment and we will take a very short break and send it over to Lagos.